You're watching Reason and Theology Live, a show dedicated to charitable discussions, debates, interviews, commentary, and analysis. The show concentrates on theological topics, historical matters, and philosophical problems with content ranging from introductory material to in-depth examinations. And now, your host, Michael Lofton.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Reason and Theology, doing a special here for Halloween. I requested a while back some videos and writing submissions from viewers of Reason and Theology concerning various supernatural experiences that they've had. And so I received quite a few of them. Thank you to everybody who shared your story with me. Unfortunately, I don't have time to share every one of them. So I took a few that I figured y'all would certainly want to see and or read. And so that's what we're going to do now. Again, these are all submitted to me by viewers of Reason and Theology. All right, let me share my screen and let's go maybe to the first video. We have a couple videos here and then a few stories that we're going to read together. Okay, you should be able to see the video now. Let me know if you have trouble hearing it.
So this was back in, obviously, 1991. I was on board the USS Mount Hood back during my Navy career, and that's an ammunition ship. We had 2,500 tons of ammunition on board. We're talking 500 and 2,000-pound bombs and the powders for the 16-inch guns on the battleships that had been recommissioned during that time. So a lot of explosive stuff. And we were in the Persian Gulf, and I was leading a prayer group because prayer suddenly got really, really popular. Go figure. Anyway, I was leading a prayer group, and in the evening, we were praying, and as clear as a bell, I saw on the bow of the ship looked like a huge angel with his sword in the water, and he was going back and forth in the water. And I said, I don't know what that was, but I like it. I'll take it. So anyway, the next morning, I go up on watch. I'm in the Combat Information Center where they do the radar and stuff like that. And we get a mine report. So whenever they would destroy a floating mine, they would send us the exact location so we could plot it on a chart. And I mean, down to the degree, minute, second. And we had to plot it 3 times to make sure we had it in the right spot. And so I plotted this thing 3 times to make sure that it was in the right spot. And then I took a look at the chart, and it was right on top of our position for midnight the night before. Yes, we'd gone over that permit. And by the way, currents and tides inside the Persian Gulf, since it's fairly closed off, are almost non-existent. So we had gone right over this thing or next to this thing, and it had not gone off. And so I just sat down and shook for a little while and then got back up on watch. So I think that was the Lord knowing that we would get that report the next morning, but letting us know that he, through that angelic protection, was the reason we didn't hit it. And we didn't like vaporize ourselves by hitting an explosive mine with all that ammunition on board.
That is an awesome story. I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much for submitting it. I don't know if you wanted me to share your name or anything, so I didn't mention your name there, but I really do appreciate you sending that. That was a fascinating story. All right, here's another one from an R&T viewer, and he has 3 stories for us. Now, it's about 22 minutes long. I'm putting it on 1.5 playback speed. If it's too fast for y'all, let me know, and I'll just slow it down. But for me, I was very comfortable listening to it at 2 times speed, so I imagine 1.5 should be pretty manageable. But again, let me know if y'all want me to adjust that. All right, this one was really fun as well. Okay, let's go.
Hey, Michael, my name is Andrew, and I have a few paranormal or supernatural stories that I think you'll be interested in. I know you asked for first-hand accounts, but I think I have a few from my mom and my brother that are too good not to share. My family originally lived in a small urban home And that property was initially one larger property joined with the neighbor's house. At some point, the larger home burned down or something, and then they split the property into two lots and then built two houses. Shortly after I was born, my mom had me asleep in a bassinet, and she was doing something, and she walked in to check on me, and she saw a woman that was transparent or translucent, and she was leaning over the bassinet and looked like she would be talking to her own child. So, she leaned over and had her hand inside the crib, like touching me or something. And my mom didn't know what to do. So, from what I understand, she walked away, said a couple prayers, came back, and the woman was gone. I don't know how often this happened, but I know it happened more than once. And when I was about 2 years old, my brother was born, and my mom said she hadn't seen the woman in a while. And then shortly after my brother was born, she saw her again, but this time, instead of just leaning over the bassinet, she was actually holding my brother.
Mm.
So imagine the shock of my mom, a young mother in her early 20s, walking into a bedroom and there's a see-through woman holding her second child. From what I understand, again, she walked away, said some prayers, and then came back into the room.
That's the part that confuses me. Why would she walk away to say those prayers? That part confuses me. All right.
And the woman was gone. I also believe some second child. From what I understand, again, she walked away, said some prayers, and then came back into the room, and the woman was gone. I also believe she saw this woman more than once, but I'm not sure how often. When I was about 4 or 5 years old, we moved into a larger country home, and we didn't have anything happen until I want to say 16 years old. Me and my brother had just gotten back from doing yard work at our grandpa's house, and we heard very distinctly footsteps above us run across the floor from one end of the house to the other. From where
And I have those stories as well. even recent ones where you hear something like that. And then, we have 2 floors. And nobody's upstairs, But then I kind of think like maybe that's some kind of animal, maybe that got in between the floors or something somehow. I don't know.
where we were in the kitchen chit-chatting before we decided to go and clean up. And we're in the middle of talking, and we suddenly hear footsteps right over our heads run all the way to the other end of the house. And we pause, look at each other, and we both ask pretty much at the same time, "Did you hear that?" And of course, we both heard the noise that sounded like very clear, like footsteps. It didn't sound like it was something from outside, like a squirrel could have gotten on the house and ran on the roof. And it didn't sound like it came from any other part of the house except directly above our heads. So we did what any young boys would do, and we grabbed random weapons from the kitchen. So obviously we had a couple steak knives, and we run upstairs looking for whatever could be up there, and we didn't see anything. A few months later, I remember I was sleeping, and I woke up and I heard footsteps come from downstairs up the steps, follow down the hallway to the bedroom I shared with my 2 brothers. And I heard something touch the doorknob and jiggle it just a little bit, and then it stopped and went away. Now, to be fair, this could have been my parents or my sister, but I asked them the next morning, and they said that no, everybody was asleep. So I'm not sure what that was. And as far as I know, nobody in my family sleepwalks. But since I didn't see anything and there was nothing besides that, I can't really say. But it definitely creeped me out, kept me staying up for the rest of the night. We had a few little things like that happen from then on until.
Oh yeah, staying up the rest of the night. One time when I was a teenager, I kept hearing late at night. I'm sorry to interrupt your story there, but it reminds me of my own. So let me interject here. That that reminds me, there was late at night, or kind of early, maybe 1 or 2 in the morning. I woke up and I kept hearing these animals in the house, like giraffes, birds, lions, weird noises, right? And I stayed up all night thinking, what in the world is going on? Am I just hearing things? And I don't want to go out there and find out what this thing is. So I'm just going to lay here, but I did not go to sleep the entire time. I stayed awake until it was daylight. So 6 or 7, somewhere around there. I don't know. And I got up, I mustered up the courage to go and check out what these animal sounds are. And it turns out it was my mother-in-law's computer. She had left the speakers on the computer, and whenever it goes to a screensaver, it would play these different animal noises. Yeah, fun times.
I can't really say, but it definitely creeped me out, kept me staying up for the rest of the night. We had a few little things like that happen from then on until I went to college. While I was in college, nothing happened, at least for me, while I'm in college at the dorm rooms. Then a few years go by, and one of my brother, Philip, one of his friends, Brandon, told us that he knew of a haunted property we could go to see some ghosts or hear some ghosts or something like that. So the ghost hunter shows were fading out at the time. I think they were probably like their 10th season or something. And we thought, how cool would it be if we could do that sort of thing on our own? So we get our flashlights and camera recorder or something and decide we're going to go to this property. The property was an old farmhouse, and to get to it, you had to cross a small bridge over a very shallow and narrow stream. And the farmhouse was abandoned and had been abandoned for years. Um, Animals had free reign in the house. There were no doors. Most of the windows were broken out. So, and was basically open to the elements too. So, the getting into the house would not actually be safe because the floorboards were actually rotted. Who knows how bad? So, we never actually went into the house because, well, none of us wants to get tetanus. So, we went to the property several times, walking around the edges of it because he told us stories of certain things happening there. So we thought, oh, it'd be nice if we can get that too. Well, one evening we're there, and it's me, my brother's friend, my brother Philip, and Philip's friend Brandon. And Philip either had a girl he was dating or another friend. I can't remember which it was. And we decided to split up, and Philip and the other person walked to one side of the property, and me and Brandon stay where we are, and we sort of examine this portion of the property that we're at. Well, this farmhouse had a barn, and the barn was pretty run down too, but it was at least safe to walk through it as long as we didn't try to climb any of the ladders and get up in the loft. Well, we're a good distance away, probably 50 yards or so from the barn, and Brandon and I are just chit chatting, and it's dark outside. We can barely see. There's barely any moonlight. And I happen to see that there is a white light shining on part of the barn. And I'm trying to focus on it to see what it is, to see if it's just the moon shining through the trees or whatever. And while I'm looking at it, I suddenly have a very strange sensation come over my whole body. I don't really know how to describe it other than like it was like I got mind punched. And my friend Brandon starts laughing and says, something just looked at us. And I look at him. I say, Brandon, what are you talking about? What do you mean something just looked at us? Do you see something over there? And he just chuckled and then said, nah, I don't see nothing. And then we walk over to the house, or walk over to the barn, because I want to see what that light was. And the light was gone immediately after this happened. So I don't know if the two are related, but this is just how it is. And for the rest of the evening, nothing else happened. A few weeks later, or maybe a couple months later, I can't remember. Anyways, sometime later, we went to this place again, and it was me, my two brothers, Philip and Jacob, and our friend Brandon. And we're on the opposite side of the stream. We're talking about going up to the house because we want to try and do our own little ghost hunter thing again. And we're just talking in front of the bridge. And while we're standing there, I start getting this just feeling of dread, is the only way I know how to describe it. And it's also very similar to the way the shows on like the ghost hunter guys would say, where you get the cold chills, you get lightheaded, maybe some nausea going on, the hair stand up on your arms and the back of your neck. And I start feeling something like that. And then when it peaks, our friend Brandon yells out that something touched him. And Brandon is the kind of guy that barely walks fast, and he is going in a full sprint away from the farmhouse, away from the bridge, back towards our vehicles. So, knowing that he's the kind of guy that never runs, I take off running with him. My brother Philip also starts running. We both look back and see our younger brother Jacob is he looks like he's moving in slow motion, like he's in a bubble or something. And I don't know what to think. I don't have time to process it in the moment. So I just keep running. And I turn around and look back, and then he's suddenly caught up with us. Well, we all settle down and we're like, oh, it was probably just an acorn that fell from the tree or a branch or something fell on you. So we go back over there and try to find it. We don't find anything. Well, we decide that's enough for the night, so we decide to head home. A couple weeks later, I'm talking to my brother Philip, and he said about the time that I started feeling off, he started seeing a woman, a transparent kind of woman, slowly twirling and dancing from the tree line towards us. And she was probably over 100 yards away when he first saw her. And he was getting uneasy and was wanting to leave. And I didn't notice it at the time because we were all just chit chatting and I wasn't really paying attention. But he actually saw the girl come all the way up to our friend Brandon and tap him on the shoulder. And then that's when we all took off running. Fast forward to a few years later, and our friend Brandon has told us about another house that is next to his parents. And we decide to go in there to check this place out. It was an old abandoned home. This one was actually safe to walk in. A lady had lived there and died. I believe she died of old age. And after she passed, they turned basically her house into like a storage building. And my friend Brandon said that he and his dad had gone in there and done the trick on the Ghost Hunter TV show where they take one of those mag lights that you twist and you turn it so that it's almost on, and then you lay it down and then you talk and say stuff like, hey, if you're here, turn the flashlight on, kind of thing. And he said they'd done that and it worked several times. And I walked into the property the first time during the day just because he wanted to show us what the property was like. And I had a very strange feeling like something was trying to pull me through the floorboards into a basement. It reminded me of the scene the Amityville Horror movie, either the first one or the remake with Ryan Reynolds, where the man gets pulled through the floor under the stairs. It felt like something was trying to do that to me. I know that sounds weird, but I don't really know how to describe it other than that. And so I thought, well, that'll be a great idea to go here at nighttime. So we do. I believe it's a week or so later. Me, Brandon, and my wife, we go over to Brandon's and we get the camcorder and we get a bunch of flashlights, and we're standing in there, and of course it's like midnight or something, and we're standing inside this home, and Brandon and his dad are going through the ghost hunter spiel, like, oh, somebody's here, talk to us or whatever. Well, I have the camera on its night vision setting, and I'm pointing it towards, we're sort of at like the front of the house, and I'm pointing it towards the back door. Well, I start to get again that feeling of dread that I mentioned before, and suddenly I notice that the back of the house is somehow getting darker in the night vision. Now, granted, that could be something like the moonlight changed, but just saying this is what I saw. And I noticed that like I said, I noticed that the camcorder, the night vision was getting darker from that part of the room, and it got from where I could barely see the outline of the door in the night vision to where I couldn't see anything. And it came all the way up to the edge of just a couple feet from us. And I closed off the camera because that feeling of dread kept creeping up and just was a little overpowering. So I told my wife, I said, hey, let's get out of here. Well, when I say let's get out of here, all the flashlights that we had brought turned on, and Brandon and his dad physically turned them all the way to off, and they stayed on until we walked through the threshold and got out of that house. So that was a little creepy. Then, yeah, so that concludes those two stories that I can think of. A couple years ago, my mom, she teaches Sunday school for the Baptist church that she goes to, and I can't remember the age group, but it's young. I think it's like maybe 8-9-year-old girls, or 8-9-year-olds. And there was a girl in there, and my mom noticed that the girl wanted to talk to her for some reason, and she stayed after one day, and my mom talked to her, and then this girl starts trying to sort of beat around the bush and not explain. And my mom finally pulls it out of her, and she starts talking about how she sees shadow people or people in some way, and that she talks to them and they tell her to do things. And my mom is relaying this information to me, and she goes through describing the people and what they do and how they act towards her and stuff. And the thing that really stood out to me in that story is the girl tells my mom that the man in the hat will not be happy that I've told you this, and he told me that if I ever tell anybody, something bad will happen to either me or them. So that's something that stuck out to me. And when my mom told me this, I said, let's treat this as if what she said is true. Let's say that there really is some type of evil presence or some type of presence that follows her, and it does try to do things to harm people that she tries to get to help her, that the little girl tries to get to help her. And with that in mind, I tell my mom, so because of that, I tell, from what I had read of different random paranormal stories, I said, you might get a visit from whatever this thing is, might just show up. And I told my mom, my advice to her was to, if she sees it or feels it's there, to close her eyes and to just pray until it leaves. And regardless of what it is, even if it's supernatural or if it's not, it'll eventually go away. So I asked my mom, don't hear back from her. So this was a Sunday after church, and I don't hear back from her until I want to say Friday. And when I talked to her on the phone, she said that she actually did get a visit that Sunday when she went to bed. So she was doing her nightly prayer routine, and she said she had her eyes closed, but she suddenly could feel that something else was in the room with her. And she knew it wasn't my dad because he was in their basement, and it was just the two of them at home at this point. And she says that she just continued her regular nightly prayer routine, and she felt the presence grow and move towards her on her bed. And she said that she didn't really think of the advice I'd given her to pray it away until she said it felt like it was right over her face. And then she started praying, and she said, as she was praying, she could feel it leave and go back to the corner of the room that it initially started in and then disappeared. And she was obviously very freaked out about that and wasn't sure what to do, but she finished up her regular nightly prayers and then said some more prayers, hoping that thing would not come back. Well, a couple days later, I believe it was a couple days later, it came back again. And she said it was the same instance. She was going through her nightly prayers and felt that presence in the corner of the room. And she said that time she immediately started praying that God would get rid of it once she felt that presence show up. And she said it went away pretty quick. Then Sunday, she told me that that little girl was not in her Sunday school class anymore, and something had happened with her family situation, and they were no longer going to the church. So it seems that what the little girl had said to my mom was that this whatever this was actually tried to scare my mom from helping this girl. And since that didn't work, it made something happen in her life to where she wouldn't come back to the church anymore. And as far as I know, this was within the last 5 or 6 years, and that girl has not been back to that church except for once, and she was only there for a few minutes to pick up a sibling or something. So anyways, that is the end of the stories that I have for you. I hope they're interesting enough to go on your show. And thank you very much, Mike.
Wow, that was interesting. Good. I appreciate that. Yeah, somebody said this video is a little too short. I agree. I wanted more. I wanted more. That was good. I enjoyed that. Thank you for submitting that. Now I had another video. I don't know what happened. I'm serious. Hear me out. It was a video that I was going to show from somebody who watches R&T. They used to be in the occult, heavily in the occult, and they had an encounter with the Virgin Mary. I mean, this is their story. Again, they submitted it via video. I forget the name because it's been a few months since I've looked at it. But they, again, were practicing the occult, had an unexpected encounter with the Virgin Mary, and it profoundly changed their life. They gave up the occult, converted to the Catholic Church, and are now very active. This individual and another person who was involved are very active in spreading the faith and the gospel with people. So it was a really cool story, and I wanted to show that. So what it is I get these video submissions. Any kind of submissions I would just put into an email folder, like just supernatural story submissions. And then when I go through the videos and I say, okay, for sure, I gotta show this one. I mean, all of them were good, but it's like I only have so much time that I can present stuff. So I said, I gotta show this one. So I put that in a separate folder that says, that was just titled videos to use. And I go back to prepare the videos for today. I can't find it anywhere. It's not in the original folder. It's not in the other folder that I put it in. I tried to do keyword searches. I couldn't find it. So sorry. You know, if you're watching this video and you submitted that to me, I apologize. I really wanted to show that video because I thought it was such an amazing story. And also evidence of God's grace and the life of his people. And I really wanted to share that with y'all, but I wasn't able to find it. But I can at least just kind of repeat the story, you know, to that effect. Like I said, again, it was a couple months ago since I've watched it, so I don't recall all the details, but I remember it was pretty impressive to hear the power of God in the life of an individual who is heavily into the occult. They have this encounter with the Virgin Mary that they didn't expect to have, and it completely transformed their lives. So, yeah, Xander says the ghost of Vatican II deleted the video. You mean the spirit of Vatican II deleted the video? Spirit of Vatican II is at it again. I mean, man, but I wish I could find it. So sorry about that. But I do have a couple of other stories here that I wanted to read to you. This is from Maria Rosaria. I'm 5 years old at the time, hanging out in our very likely and noisy kitchen. My siblings are jumping and running around the kitchen, making havoc as usual. To my right in front of me is a large water jug. Make the screen larger there. To my right in front of me is a large water jug attached to a stand with a water dispenser. Below on me is the floor, or below on me is, I keep misreading this. Below on me is my, wow, this is the fourth time I'm going to have to read this. Below me on the floor is my little brother. This is what happens when I'm trying to read something while also looking at the chat. I have to keep an eye on the chat, but also read at the same time. So it's, yeah. Below me on the floor is my little brother, about 6 months old, crawling on the tile floor. My sibs are going back and forth, running in every direction, and manage to knock over the giant jug of water. The jug full of water falls over right above the tiny little body of my little brother, Joey. Suddenly, the huge bottle of water stops in the air. I am watching the jug as it remains in the air, turning slowly. My mom is standing next to the judge. The jug. She is faced in the opposite direction with her back to the levitating water bottle, shouting to the hyper kids to settle down. She turns around and catches the jug, totally unaware that it had been waiting in the air for her for about 5 to 8 seconds. If you like this story, I could send you pics of me and my brother at age 5 and 6 months. And they also sent me like pictures of the, what kind of water jug they're referring to. And it's one of those like water cooler, the blue ones. Yeah. That was a pretty cool story. Let's go to this other one here. This is from Sackett Snodgrass. I don't think that, I don't know if that's a real name or if that's a pen name, because I know this is a person who also writes stories, because they say, I like to write horror stories in my free time. Nothing has ever come of them. The vast majority end up old, forgotten notepads organized in a plastic tote or a briefcase. But one story always chilled me to the bone. It was about a house that I frequently dreamed of as a child. So I guess they were writing a story based on a dream that they would have. On the way over to my cousin's house, there sat an elderly estate that had been forgotten about. The houses near it were new and renovated, so this house stuck out like a sore thumb. Nothing about it was fantastical. Many people would offer forget it was even there. I had already noticed it because I had just watched the classic Halloween film, and the house itself was very similar to that which was depicted on the screen. Not only would this particular house catch my attention on the drive over to my cousin's, but it followed me into my dreams. One dream in particular is fascinating as it connects to another real event that I cannot explain. In the dream, I was sitting on a school bus to the right, looking out the window. Obviously, this was a dream, and I knew it. I went to a private academy, and as such, there were no buses. How do y'all know, by the way, that something is a dream? I don't know that. I don't know if I've ever had a dream where I knew it was a dream. I'm pretty sure I always know, or I always think this is real, and I wake up and it turns out it's not. And they are so vivid and so real to me. I'll give you one example. One time I dreamed that I went to prison for life. It was a life sentence, and there was no parole, nothing, just life. And I remember that feeling of despair of knowing that I would never be free again and that I would spend the rest of my life in jail. And that feeling was so vivid and so real that when I woke up, it still stuck with me. And it took me a while to realize that it's just a dream. So I don't know how y'all know that something is a dream when y'all have it. I digress. However, now that I was completely aware of the dream, I decided to see where it was going to go. That sounds pretty fun. I was dismayed when the bus stopped at this house that I had mentioned, old and forgotten. I remember turning around to tell the bus driver that I was at the wrong stop, but the bus was nowhere to be found. Reluctantly, I decided to venture on inside the house. Perhaps they had a phone that I could call my parents. I remember to this day the very layout of the house as if it were my own. Upon entering, to your immediate left was the living room. Ahead was the dining room and kitchen. To your immediate right was the staircase that curved upward. And below that was a door leading to the basement. Everything was covered in a heavy blanket of dust. I was quiet and smelled of mildew, but I pushed, or it was quiet and smelled of mildew. I was wondering there. It was quiet and smelled of mildew, but I pushed forward into the kitchen to find a phone. There was no power, and there appeared to be no one inside the house. I decided then to go upstairs to see if I can find someone to help me. As I climbed the cracking wooden stairs, I was greeted with a long hallway with doors on each side. There were two on the right, two on the left. A door at the end of the hallway that was open and showed an empty master bedroom. In between the first and second door on the left-hand side was another staircase leading up into the attic. With nowhere else to go, I decided to head upstairs into the loft. What was there still chills me to the bone. The attic space was large and filled with boxes of forgotten items from the previous owners. There was a large oval window that was located at the top of the perch of the attic. The yellow sun shining down and casting an oval of light on the ground. In that oval of light laid a corpse, a rather badly burned and rotting display of flesh. I remember catching my breath and freezing, staring at what I was seeing. It was at this moment that the cadaver twisted and snapped, rising up over me like a giant, and screamed. I did the only thing I could do at this point, to run. I stumbled down the small staircase and hit the wall opposite of it onto the second floor. There were shouts, screams, doors slamming open and shut. I continued to run past, not tearing my eyes away from what I could see in front of me as I was wearing blinders. I ran down the second stairwell on the first floor, the rotting beast of a man quickly behind me. I flung upon the door and ran onto the lawn. I was dismayed that the road was gone. In its place laid a great moat with iron wrought spikes at the bottom. It was at this moment I remembered that I was dreaming, and if I could do something rash, I would wake up. With no time to waste, I ran towards the moat and jumped. I didn't wake up. Rather, I was back at the house again with this demonic creature at my heels. Again and again I jumped, and again I did not wake up. I don't know when I was broken free from this terror of dreams, but when I did, I was shaken. Years after this, I went through high school and college. This dream stuck to me like a disease. I couldn't get rid of it. And so I decided to write it down as I'm doing for you. It was at this moment when I met my future wife. We were dating and enjoying each other's company, driving around our childhood homes, going on hikes and picnics. I mentioned to her one day of this house that I was writing about, and it was a very real house that I had dreamed about. She begged to see it, and so I reluctantly showed her. At this point in time, the house was barely visible from the road. Weeds and bushes and trees had grown wildly on the property, not as it had once been when I was a child and remembering seeing it for the first time. The road that we were on had only one lane, and I told her that she could look out from the truck that I was driving. She sat and looked a great deal of time before I noticed that she was shaking. Her natural color transitioned to a stark white. I asked her what was wrong, and she begged for me to drive on. It was after much poking and prodding that she revealed to me the secret of my nightmares. She had seen the house, and most importantly, she had seen that which was hidden in the attic. Someone had died there, I think, she whispered. Someone was buried alive, but didn't die just yet. Someone who suffered, and now they're angry. I never told her what I saw or experienced inside the house, only that I was writing about a house that I had dreamed about. For her to know such a detail that I never spoke of to anyone only assured me that she indeed saw what I had seen in my dreams. I fear for what had happened to those who had lived in the house, and I fear for my mind knowing that if my future wife saw what I had seen in my dream, how much truth is there in this nightmare? To this day, I still have dreams about the house and that which lies within. This is a true story. Feel free to share. I do not have pictures as it is now impossible to see the house from the road. Nature has reclaimed that which has haunted me for so long. It's pretty cool, right? I liked that one. That was interesting. Now, I have one that I just thought of. I want to see if I can try to find it. I'm going to sneak away for 2 minutes. So we're going to have a 2-minute break. I want to see if I can find something. If not, I'll just try to retell it without any notes, but I think I actually might have an email with some of the notes. So give me 1 second. I will be back.
Hey R&T fans, just a quick word about one of our sponsors, Verbum, an excellent Bible and theological software. Go to verbum.com/reason. You'll support what we're doing here at Reason and Theology. You'll also get 10% off any of the packages that you choose, along with 5 free extra books. Again, verbum.com/reason.
All right. Good news. Found it. Let me pull it up here. Okay, so this was a dream, a crazy dream that I had in 2011 that I think you're going to enjoy. January 3rd, 2011. I emailed it because I just thought it was interesting. So I emailed it to a friend. So again, I wrote this in 2011, the best that I could remember after I had, woken up. So, all right, here's the crazy dream. I was in my dream and I was in one of those car garages that have a bunch of cars in it with the different levels and have a top level that does and has a top level that does not have a roof. I could work on my grammar back in 2011. Again, I was just shooting this off to a friend, so I probably didn't even care about grammar or anything like that. I had wings and I needed to get to the top level so I could fly away and get to my destination. I entered into the garage on the first level to be able to get to the top level, so again, I could fly away. As I entered the garage, there was a gate I had to go through, and once I went through it, I couldn't go back. The problem was, in order to go to the top level, there was another gate that had to be open. In other words, there are two gates. Once I came in, the one that I came in from and can't go back through, and the other I need to go through, but it is closed. In order to open the closed gate, there is a mechanism that has a green button to open the gate and a red button to close the gate. Wow, that makes sense, right? I needed to click the green button to open it and go to the top, but there was a guy operating it. I walked over to him and asked him to open the gate, but he told me to follow him. He took me to a really creepy part of the basement in the garage that had a freezer, and he showed me a huge chunk of frozen meat. He spoke no words, but for some reason in my dream, I knew that he was telling me that he was going to kill me and freeze me like the meat in his freezer. I began to run away, but he grabbed me and we both fell down. I was crawling, trying to get away, and he was crawling, trying to drag me back to kill him. Or to kill me, I'm sorry. I looked back at him, and he was no longer a guy, but a monster. This is a really vivid dream. I don't tend to have this many details in my dreams. This was very unusual for me. So he's no longer a guy. He turned into a monster. I finally was able to get up. I ran to the control panel and pressed the green button. But before I could run through the gate, through the open gate, he pressed the red button and the gate shut. I had to run back and hit the green button without him killing me, and I was finally able to do so. I ran to the gate and actually made it through in time. So I made it. I ran up the stairs, and I finally got to the last set of stairs that leads to the top level where I could fly away. When I reached the top of the stairs, I opened the door. As I entered the door, I was shocked to see the room was an enclosed area with only one way out, which were a set of stairs that led back down to the monster. As soon as I saw the stairs, my heart dropped, knowing I would have to go back down to face my certain death. At that very moment, I heard the monster let out a loud laugh that echoed throughout the entire place. Immediately after the laugh, I woke up, still hearing the laugh ringing in my ears. Yeah, that was 2011. Really weird dream. Y'all psychoanalyze that one for me. Explain to me what was going on in my life at the time. Trying to think what was going on in 2011. It's really weird. Really weird. Again, my dreams aren't usually that detailed. Very odd. There was actually some logic and structure to that, dream compared to most dreams that I have that just make very little sense. Okay, I think I got one more for y'all. Perhaps there was some pressing issue in your life that you knew you had to confront but dreaded it. Probably so. Probably so. All right. Let's see. Share my screen. This is from Marcelo. Hi, Michael. I saw on your show that you are currently asking for supernatural stories, and I thought I would share 2 stories with you. Let's see. Forgive me for not sending a video recording. I speak English as a second language, and to be honest, I tend to write clear in English than speaking them out loud. I want to share two stories with you. The first story I want to share first happened when I was 17 years old. I was in high school in Ecuador, and in my school, we used to volunteer in an asylum for very old people with some kind of mental and physical disabilities. From women as old as 70 years and older that could not even put their own clothes on, to men who had to be in wheelchairs because their bodies were really deformed. The teachers organized us, students, to talk to the old people with disabilities and maybe help them with whatever they needed at the moment. I was given an old man around 70, 80 years old in a wheelchair with mental disabilities. He could barely talk. I had a tough time understanding him. I remember that the nurses told me that he has been in the hospital for 50, 60 years. Not a single time any member of his family has ever been there to see him. I was really moved and saddened when I heard this. How can you leave your son for 50 to 60 years at a public hospital and never again come back to see him? Anyway, I was deeply moved and really felt sorry for him. When I started talking to him, he had a wish to go to a park near the hospital. I could not refuse to help him, and we went to the park. Nothing extraordinary happened at that moment. I just tried to talk to him while struggling to understand him because of his disabilities. After a couple hours in the park, it was time for us to go back to the hospital. At the end of the day, I was deeply moved, and I gave him a miraculous medal that I was wearing, but decided to give it away to him. A few months after that, we returned to the hospital to keep volunteering there, but this time he was not there. I asked the nurses about what had happened to him, and the nurses said that the family came for him and took him after 50 to 60 years of never seeing him. I really think it was the Holy Mother of God who intervened in his life. The second story happened when I was 15 years old. This happened in 2004. This detail is really important because of some comparisons. I want to make a famous movie that came out in 2005. When I was 15, I used to be part of a religious organization called the Heralds of the Gospel. They are an international Roman Catholic organization that started in Brazil. Once a year during summer, they would take the best candidates to join the Heralds of the Gospel to Brazil during summer. You may know this, but in Brazil, a lot of black magic is practiced. From macumba and voodoo to many different demonic practices. In fact, if you go to a cemetery in Brazil, you might encounter candles and demonic stars in some tombs. Anyway, we were staying outside the city of Sao Paulo. It took us around an hour in the car to just travel from the place where we were staying until we could reach the city. Between Sao Paulo and the Herald of the Gospel place that we were staying at was basically a jungle. I wanted to emphasize that the following story had only happened to me once in my lifetime. Never again has ever happened to me something remotely similar. I don't do drugs or anything that might otherwise explain the story. No one believes me whenever I tell the story, but here it goes anyway. One night we were returning late from Sao Paulo to the place where we were staying outside the city. We were in a minivan, and it was around 10 to 11 p.m. I was seated in the left part of the minivan, facing the window where I could look at the road completely empty from the other side. The right side of the van was a jungle, and to the left side was a mountain. Suddenly, I see a shadow coming down from the left of the road as if coming from down the mountain. I could not stop looking at the shadow because of how different it was from anything else I've seen. I was completely awake, and this was absolutely not a dream or a nightmare. The shadow came down walking all the way from the mountain, crossing the road and staying in the middle of the road. I could not keep my eyes away from that thing. The closer we got to it, the slower time went, or at least that's how it felt. The moment that the van encountered the shadow, it was like the shadow knew exactly where to stand, and the driver of the van didn't seem to see the shadow because of how close the van passed the shadow. I cannot believe that a human being would not at least take a few steps back to just get away from the van, just to not get hit by it. But the shadow did not move at all. Suddenly, the shadow focused its sight on me until the moment in which our faces were basically in front of mine. Extremely close. I was seated in the left part of the car by the window, and with the window rolled down, suddenly time seemed to stop. I I had the shadow face just a few centimeters away from my own face. We were seeing face to face when the shadow face started to deform. The eyes and the mouth seemed like they were getting darker and darker and getting deformed in a way that's impossible to humans. I honestly felt like something hit me in the chest, and I could not stop seeing how that shadow's face deformed further and further. Suddenly, time started once again, and the van moved away from the shadow, standing in the middle of the road. For a moment, because of the shock, I lost sight of the shadow. When I recovered a couple seconds later, I saw behind me, looking again for the shadow, but there was nothing. I could not find the thing that scared me almost to death. Never again have I experienced anything like that. A year later, in 2005, a movie called The Exorcism of Emily Rose came out. In this movie, the poor girl kept seeing people with their face that would deform in a very similar way that I saw the shadow's face get deformed, and the mouth and eyes get darker and darker. It was shocking to me how similar it was. I want to emphasize again that the movie came out in 2005, and I experienced the shadow thing in 2004 and never again experienced anything close to this. I honestly think that what I saw in that day in Brazil was a demon, the personal demon that haunts me. It's a good story. Very good story. Thank you for sharing that. Oh, looking at the chat here. Light of Christ Press says, I've had a few dreams of doing exorcisms. One was an ill person in bed appearing to be Christ. I realized it wasn't because, so I started in the name of Christ, and green orbs left him. Yeah, I've had a lot of those. Well, I have some real life stories involving stuff like that, but I don't want to share people's actual, experiences and stuff like that without their permission. But, yeah, crazy stuff, y'all. And I appreciate y'all sending them all to me. Let's see. Benny says, please also read my Alien Creature in the Woods story. You said it was great. Yeah, I vaguely recall that. Let me see if I can find it. Hold on. Let's see here. Okay, let me try to find here. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Let me share my screen. Saying this happened in broad daylight. Let's go to it. All right. You should be able to see the screen now. All right. So here's from Benny. So here's my story of something that could be supernatural. When I was younger, about 10 to 12 years old approximately, I used to go to a primary middle school that was quite near my house. Now, there were multiple paths or roads from my house to the rest of the town, all going downwards. And the road from the house to the school was also like that, a kind of steep descent down. Well, not really steep, just descending down a lot, and there would be a small house or small houses and apartments on the one side and a small park on the other side. The small park had quite a number of tall, thin trees, but it wasn't dense at all. It was just an area with some nature that people go to. You could literally see through it and to the road on the other side of the park as well. So one day, after school finished, I was walking up one of the roads, such that the park was on my left side, and the small houses and really small apartment-like buildings were on my right. I was walking near the houses, and as I happened to look into the park, I saw in the distance, moderate distance, neither close nor far away, what looked like a green or brown thing near one of the trees. It was a bipedal, kind of like a human with 2 arms and legs. And for some reason, it was banging its head against one of the trees. I vaguely remember it falling down and quickly getting up just to hit itself again against one of the trees again. Though what I certainly do remember is that it would just hit its head against the trees in a very quick, almost dizzy fashion. Almost like a quick cartoon animation, I guess like the Woody Woodpecker or something. The way it moved its limbs in general was really quick, almost cartoonish. It also had an oval head, kind of like an egg, with a wide part at the top and the narrow part as its neck. It had no discernible eyes that I could see. I knew about the concept of aliens at that point and even saw a few shows on alien abduction, so I was kind of disturbed at seeing this and just turned my eyes away and decided to climb the road to my house. I never saw a creature like that ever again, and to this day, I'm not sure what it was. Could it have been something normal? Maybe a person dressed very weirdly and kind of mentally not all there? Was my mind playing tricks on me? Who knows? Only God fully knows. Anyways, that was my little story of me seeing what could be something weird, alien or supernatural. Hope you like it. Very good story. Very good story. I can just vividly see this thing, like the Woody Woodpecker banging itself against the tree. Oh boy. All right. I appreciate y'all all submitting to me your stories, conversions, all kinds of stuff. I truly appreciate it. Sorry that we didn't get to it all. We're at an hour and I have to head out. So I appreciate y'all all who submitted your stories to me, and I hope y'all enjoyed it. And have a good evening. All right. See y'all later. God bless.
Oh wait, before you go, I would really appreciate it if you would consider supporting this channel. This is my primary means to provide for my family, and it also helps me to produce content like this video. If you would like to support me, become a patron by visiting patreon.com/Reason and Theology. You'll also get access to extra exclusive content when you become a patron. Lastly, hit that like button and the subscribe button, and be sure to leave a comment down below. God bless.